So, hi everyone. A very warm welcome and thank you for joining us today for this dialogue. I am Shufen, the curator and also researcher behind this project that this particular dialogue session is a part of. And for all of you, I'm currently based in Singapore, where I'm an assistant professor at Singapore Management University, where I teach and am also lead coordinator of the Arts and Culture Management program. And on behalf of my team, I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's conversation. But before we start this conversation proper, I thought I would just like to share some contextual background of the project, which might be of possible interest to those of you who are joining us for the first time. However, for those of you who are already familiar with this project, please do bear with me for the next few minutes. So this dialogue session, as mentioned, is part of the Culture and the Smart City project, which is a multilateral and trans-regional collaboration initiated by the European Union National Institutes for Culture, or UNIC for short, members who are currently in Singapore, which the Embassy of the Republic of Poland in Singapore is a part of as well. This project is also supported under the guidance of the Goethe-Institut Singapore. And this project, or rather the seedlings of this project, were first planted in a pre-pandemic time, more than 2 years ago. And together with my initial collaborators, which includes our moderator for tonight, Aurel, I would like to believe that this project started because we all commonly shared a strong belief in the importance of the role of the arts and culture to our everyday lives, and in particular that there should be a robust discussion and contemplation about the role of future urban cultural transformation in our future cities. And while the smart city is not a new concept or discourse, we felt that it was a useful starting point or framework for all of us, as it starkly highlighted how the arts, culture, and creativity have often been left out of the conversation when we conceptualize or discuss cities of the future. Hence, we adopted the smart city framework as a means for us to think about what's missing when we consider the cities of the future, and also as a means to highlight the significance of not only the arts and culture, but importantly, the human-centric perspectives that draw attention to how the context-specific ways in which we experience, navigate, connect with, negotiate, and play within an increasingly digitalized urban environment. So this was the start of the Culture and the Smart City project. Overall, over the last 2 years or more, this project has aimed to create a multidisciplinary and translocal space for deep contemplation and imagination on urban cultural transformation from a smart city perspective. We've tried to do so by bringing together artists, researchers, activists, and experts and enthusiasts from varying fields across the globe. And although, like almost everything else, while COVID-19 did disrupt many of our initial plans and dreams, we still managed to continue on and launch and complete phase 1, which was a virtual fellowship network. And for more details, I encourage you to visit our website and read the many thought-provoking insights of our phase 1 fellows. What's also worth noting from this phase is that we also specially produced 2 videos featuring our Singapore contributors, which I also urge you to watch as they feature 2 brilliant individuals, their projects and perspectives on the importance of culture and sustainability when thinking about the future city that we would like to live in. Phase 2 of this particular project was kickstarted in August 2021. For me, it was important to broaden this phase and to also enable this particular project to reach out to others and to inspire others to join in this conversation of what urban cultural transformation really means from the perspective of the smart city. Because we felt that I felt that it was in the kind of unarticulated and unforeseen gaps that new possibilities begin. And so I hope that many of you here will continue to join us in this journey for this project and also share your insights with us about culture and the smart city. Phase 2 basically consists of 4 public programming strands. One key programming strand is the Culture and the Smart City Provocation series, which is what this particular dialogue tonight is part of. And with this dialogue and others in the series, this series together consists of live virtual conversations exploring what could and should be the role of the future smart city, and in particular the role of arts, culture, and creativity. And we hope that this series will offer fresh perspectives on how culture and cities are evolving before our eyes. This is actually the 6th provocation in the series. And on the slide in front of you, you will be able to see all the topics and speakers as well. We strongly encourage you to visit and listen to all the dialogues, which are now available on our website or on our YouTube playlist. And tonight, I'm pleased and very excited to share that for this 6th provocation, we are now joined by 2 amazing individuals from different disciplines again, and also with different kind of human experiences. And together with each other, they will explore what a human-centric perspective to thinking about cities really means. And I believe that they will do so by considering the role of conscious design, well-being, and ethics in today's society of digital technologies, big data, and social networks. Importantly, I also hope that this conversation will not just be between the 2 of them, but I also hope that each of you here will also join in the conversation. So we strongly encourage you to share with us your thoughts, comments, and questions at any time by using the chat function, be it whether you're joining us here today on Facebook Live or in the Zoom session. And with that, I hand the virtual floor over to Aurel, who will moderate tonight's conversation, and I wish each of you new insights and inspiration from the dialogue. Thank you. Over to you, Aurel.
Thank you, Sue Fern. Thanks for this wonderful introduction. And it's really great to be back here and to see how the project evolved. And really excited tonight to introduce you to Natalia Olszewska. And we will start with her presentation. And I will pick up some threads from there, but I really urge everybody else to collect some thoughts, post them in the chat, and then I can read them out and we can discuss them all together in the second half of this hour. Okay, welcome, Natalia. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, sorry, you can see my desktop. Okay, can you see my screen? Perfect, okay.
Very good.
Very good. Okay, great. Yes, thank you very much for introduction, and also thank you very much for invitation to this fascinating series. Special thanks goes to all the organizers, but also Embassy of Republic of Poland in Singapore, who reached me directly. I'm going to speak about cities and human needs. Just very briefly about myself. So my perspective on cities will not be very technological. I'm not a very technological person. My background is in medicine, in neuroscience. It's kind of interdisciplinary. And for the last few years, I've been working across discipline in order to, by the way, I'm sorry, can you see also yourself on my screen, Aurel? Should I take off the, no. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Yes, for the last few years, I've been working across disciplines, and I guess medicine is about instinct of care, about people and their health and well-being. So I've brought this instinct to the world of built environment. Hence, my professional engagement as a fellow at the Center of Conscious Design, which is global think tank working at the intersection of architecture and public health. Hence also my teaching efforts at the program which is called Neuroscience Applied to Architectural Design, and hence also my engagement in Impronta, which is a neuroscience consultancy for architecture, which I co-founded with 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐿. So this is to show my background in medicine, which gave me some sort of knowledge, understanding of health and disease, understanding of the workings of human body, neuroscience, which is more knowledge of human central nervous system, that is brain and mind, and the understanding of scientific methods to study phenomena and research methods. And the program that I graduated from 2 years ago, Neuroscience Applied to Architecture, where I teach also at the moment, and getting more kind of understanding of how humans can be affected by environment. And I would say that my purpose lies at the intersection of these three fields. I'm really passionate about truly people-centered environments. I'm passionate about design for well-being and health and prevention of health, and also the intersection of architecture and public health. So in this field that I represent, neuroscience for architecture, very often we talk about this reciprocal connection between buildings or physical environments and people's experience. And very often we quote Sir Winston Churchill, who famously said, first we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. And the anecdote says that he expressed these words just after the Second World War. House of Commons, the seat of English parliamentarism, was completely demolished, and there were many discussions how it should be refurbished, what should be the new shape. They were talking about maybe circular form or semi-circular form. Eventually, they decided to design it as we can see it on the image. So it reflects the political order in Great Britain, that is two parties, opposite parties, Conservatives and Labour Party, that has governed the country for a long time. And the idea is that as the building now shapes experience of people sitting in this building, it also shapes back the political and social order. Before I start talking about smart cities, but foremost cities and human needs, I just wanted to reflect. I wanted to encourage us to reflect collectively about forces shaping cities. Of course, it's some sort of simplification. I'm not going to exploit the topic. Of course, it's a combination of different forces, let's say, but I just wanted to highlight these maybe 4 elements. So let's say that there are intentions to create human cities, human-centered cities, with the focus on society and community. So that's the world where, let's say, humans come first, or the cities when humans come first. There's also quite a lot of focus on innovation. Some people just, let's say, stay in this quarter and think mainly about how to innovate, how to push the progress. And of course, this is also this innovative approach to cities is also quite common. Of course, there's been a lot of discussion about sustainability. Sustainable urbanism. I must say that from my perspective, this approach is more physical, that's really behavioral. I think we still don't understand really what sustainability means from psychosocial perspective. However, it's good that this discussion is there. And of course, the corporate world with its capitalistic interest, which is everywhere. So I would propose these are 4 cities, 4 forces shaping current cities in a way. Of course, I'm going to focus on humans and the idea that humans should come first. And what is a city? This is the question that I would like to pose at the beginning of my provocation. By the way, I don't have ambition to answer this question. I treat it more in an instrumental way. And by answering this question, I would like to take inspiration from the book of Italo Calvino, Italian writer, Invisible Cities, who focuses on intangible aspects of cities, ephemeral aspects of cities that very often we don't speak about. We speak so much about infrastructure, we speak so much about city that is visible to us, that we forget to stress the fact that cities affect our minds, they affect our bodies, they are part of our identities through the concept of place attachment, sense of place, for example. They affect our memories, they constitute part of our memories. They shape our desires, or they are a reflection of our desires. For many people who decide to migrate to cities, they represent also hope for a better life, not only from economical standpoint. They are also a source of inspiration to many. And what are smart cities? So, of course, the discourse is very, very vague, and probably there's more than one definition, but I take inspiration from a comment written by Federico Caprotti in 2008 in journal Nature. Future cities moving from technical to human needs perspective. And Caprotti proposes that smart urbanism is a set of approaches which aim to make city more efficient and economically successful through the use of digital technologies and networks. And in his comment in Nature, he also proposes that usually when we speak about smart cities, we apply three lenses. So the first lens that we very often apply is the lens of high-tech infrastructure, high-tech architecture. The second lens that very often we apply is the economic lens. Of course, cities are accumulation of social capital, economic capital, and they're a seat of business. There are centers for different groups with capitalistic motivations. And the third lens is efficiency lens. So we're very much focused on this imperative of efficiency, more efficient cities, more efficient buildings. But the lens which is very often not addressed is the lens of actual human needs, maybe also because one would need also to understand what we mean by human needs. And of course, I'm not going to exploit the topic. This is my very personal subjective point of view. However, based on research that I've done with my colleague, my collaborator, Nurtaville, a few years ago, we've proposed that traditional Maslow's pyramid of human needs could constitute a framework also for the city. Maslow was a humanist psychologist. He spoke quite a lot about fundamental human needs. However, he's not the one who created pyramid, but that's how the concept is very often described. Nevertheless, when we're talking about the hierarchy of human needs, we start from the base. So just maybe one comment, these needs are pretty universal, and they are somehow related to our ontological and phylogenetic evolution. So the idea is that we are part of a human species. We are wired biologically in a certain way. We've been also evolving in a certain way, and these needs are pretty universal. On the most basic level, we've got physiological needs. In the context of the city, they could be linked to city infrastructure. Then when we go up, we've got this need of psychosocial security, which is pretty universal. We need to feel safe. It's very important for us. It's basic for our survival. So in the context of city, it could be represented by all sorts of services, like police or fire services. We go up again, and there's a very important fundamental need, which is about sense of belonging. Research links sense of belonging or lack of sense of belonging with chronic mental stress, mental disease, also physical disorders. So it's very important to speak about connectivity, sense of connection, and the quality of our relationships, and how city enables us fostering interactions with others. When we go a level up again, it's about growth, which is innate part of our lives. We strive for growth, we strive for learning, and learning is very important part of our life. We need possibilities for cognitive development. And then almost at the top of the pyramid, we're talking about self-esteem. We know that city is part very often of our identity. So how we perceive our city, or how city is perceived collectively, if it's appreciated, for example, for cultural heritage or historical heritage, is very important actually also to our well-being or self-esteem. The idea is that if all these needs are addressed, then people thrive. They go into direction of self-actualization that makes them also often, it's not dogma, it probably depends on individual, but it renders them maybe more responsible socially. They might behavior in more pro-social or pro-environmental way. Now, what it's got to do with neuroscience? So I just wanted to propose that all these needs could be further understood through the lens also of neuroscience or other sciences like psychology, anthropology, sociology, because I don't think I've got monopoly for insights on human behavior, or my field doesn't have monopoly, but the idea is that these kind of sciences, which help us understand better humans, their motivations, their behavior, could give us extra insights, better understanding of these human needs. So again, basic level physiological needs, we're talking of course about basics like food, access to water, quality of air, but also natural light, which has been widely discussed in urban settings due to high-rise architecture. We know that we need natural light in order to thrive biologically, natural life, and train circadian rhythms. Then quality of sleep, which is not trivial problem within the urban context, opportunities for physical movement, which constitute part of cardiovascular health. We go level up, we are talking about sense of belonging, we've got social interactions, bonds, the quality of bonds, which is very much related to hormone known as oxytocin. Charles Montgomery in his book Happy City speaks about oxytocin release, happy city, positive emotions, fostered through the quality social interactions. Also opportunities for touch, that's very important, that's very human. And then level up, we've got this striving for cognitive development, as I was mentioning before. So novelty, stimulation, and brain health, which helps to release dopamine. Dopamine is very important for brain health, but also is related to prevention of brain disease and brain aging. And then we go up again, self-esteem, positive emotions, positive psychology, which helps us to flourish, part of our well-being. On the very top, also the sense of beauty, right? We're talking at the top about more refined aesthetic emotions, the sense of beauty, which is innate to nature, but we could also talk about aesthetics of the surroundings, physical surroundings around us, which help us also to experience awe, for example, and feel a part of something bigger. So, of course, when we're talking about this universal need, context is extremely important. It always matters. As I said, many of these needs are related to human biology, physiology, or our psychological characteristics, but of course there are many nuances, and these nuances always need to be considered when we're talking about design of cities. Hence, it's very important to engage local communities, and life of people in Rome, of course, might be slightly different, also from cultural perspective comparing to life of people in Singapore. And then what is also very important to stress, we're talking about some sort of hierarchy of human needs. And the idea is that first, these basic needs need to be addressed and fulfilled in order for individuals to flourish. So context matters also meaning that when the basic infrastructure is not there, for example, in many areas on the globe where there is war conflict and the heartbreaking situation that we are observing now also in Ukraine, it's very difficult for people to thrive. And of course, these kind of situations will push them into their survival mode, not flourish mode. So to summarize, to wrap up this part of presentation, it was supposed to be provocative, so I will be provocative. I'll say that to me, smart means truly human-centered. And to me, smart city is the city which enables flourishing and supports well-being and human health, which, according to World Health Organization, is a state of social, physical, emotional well-being. And maybe rather than speaking about smart, I would speak about conscious cities, because I also represent the Center for Conscious Design. Of course, I don't want to stick to any specific terminology, because we could speak about adaptive cities or responsive cities or wise cities. But the idea is that city is aware of people, of human needs. If there is technology which is embedded in the city, it understands human needs, and maybe it helps people to flourish. Okay, examples. Maybe omnipresent biomedical sensors could help us, for example, to understand if we got enough natural light throughout the cycle of 24, 25 hours. Maybe you know, some technological solutions could help us, for example, to understand if we spend enough time in regenerative spaces, if our stress level is under control. The idea in this case is that, yes, technology helps us to understand our bodies, because we don't always understand and interpret very, very well workings of our bodies. And then the fundamental question is, yes, also how to translate these insights emerging from neuroscience, but also, as I've mentioned, other fields that tell us something about human behavior, human psychology, into guidelines which help us to create more healthy and democratic cities. And here I wanted to also stress the idea of inclusion, both active through co-design, and I know it's difficult to make it work in practice, but I think we should be perseverant about this approach. That's the only way really to create democratic cities, but also passive inclusion, which is really about implementation of insights from the disciplines that I've mentioned. So here, maybe some of the things that I've been talking about were quite abstract, so now I would like to be a little bit more specific, and I'll just share with you some of the examples of application of neuroscience in architecture. I'll share with you 3 case studies. They are more focused on architecture, but of course it's a matter of scale, and I think some of these interventions could be also applied at urban scale. So this is an example of the project targeted at specific population. It was a report that I worked on when I collaborated with Studio 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐿, where I worked as a lab lead. Let's say the client or the architectural company that we did this project for, 𝐂𝐤𝐿, it's quite a big global architectural company, and they let's say have this idea also of social responsibility, but also they are very much interested in idea of design to prevent disease, not only I was talking about cardiovascular health versus brain health. They were specifically interested in how through design you can prevent brain aging. So we've been doing research for almost a year, collecting all sorts of insights from neurobiology, from cognitive neuroscience, it was kind of translational research. We were translating insights from publications, and translating them into practical guidelines for designers. The outcome was a report, a series of educational workshops and workbook. And the paradigm was this idea of enriched environments, which comes from neuroscience, from neurobiology. I'm not going to get into details. We can also discuss it further, but the idea is that environments should have the right kind of complexity, and they should stimulate senses, they should stimulate people cognitively, they should also create possibilities for physical movement. And on the right, you can see some of the examples of interventions. For example, the stress on inclusive intergenerational places to counter ageism and promote positive stereotypes. Stress on wayfinding navigation so people can move through the spaces more easily. Creation of sense of place through all sorts of design strategies to trigger memories. Tactile and sensory stimulation strategies, also art installation embedded within the urban context. Opportunities also to reduce stress, because stress is known to contribute to biological aging also of the brain. The other example of the project, which started with research, everything started from the idea for this paper, the potential of transition spaces to restore attention, that I wrote with my colleague, architect 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐿. She lived in Japan at the time. We took some inspiration also from traditional Japanese architecture, but the whole discourse was that in so many cases, transition spaces in the buildings like corridors, but also within the urban context, for example, passages, tunnels, some sorts of routes are in a way neglected. They are not really designed to their full potential, and they, for example, could help people to restore their cognitive resources. So from scientific point of view, the inspiration was attention restoration theory. It's a concept which has been researched for the last 2 decades in the field of environmental psychology and environmental neuroscience. And then 2 years later, I've had a chance, together with Impronta team, to implement this concept into practice. Example of the office, but as I said, it could be also implemented on a city scale. I can't say who was the client, because the project is still ongoing, but it's quite a big company with the office, one of the many offices in Warsaw, in Poland. And the idea was that the office should support regeneration well-being of users. So here we see some sort of diagrammatic representation of cognitive experience of the people. The idea is that the passage through the corridor should help people to be in more positive cognitive states, like indirect attention or positive daydreaming, and reduce their level of stress. Here we, I'm sorry. Here we see some sort of, so the report was packed with guidelines for materiality, light, color, typology, and things like that. But this is just an example of materiality guidelines to help lower the stress response, but also stimulate cognitive maps, and the same enhance this concept of place attachment, the feeling of place attachment for the people in this space. And then also, we are very much interested in measuring design impact on a more advanced level. You could even have some feedback loops embedded in the office, in the building, but also on the city scale that could tell you how the people feel, and you could have, let's say, buildings or cities responding to all sorts of biological parameters. This is also the concept of conscious cities. We can talk about it, maybe utopian one, but this is something to be explored. And the third case study, social connection, the design for social connection. So that was a proposal for the project. Also something I've worked on, collaborating with Studio Hume, the client was very much interested in public health around San Diego district where there is epidemics of loneliness, and through science-informed research, insights from behavioral neuroscience, we wanted to foster social connection at San Diego district train stations. I'm not going to get into details, aware of time. Sorry, I'll just come back, I think. Okay, that's good. So the efficacy of neuroscience, to summarize this part of presentation, I think the efficacy of neuroscience is related to the fact, sorry, let me just come back to this slide again. The efficacy of neuroscience is related to the fact that neuroscience brings us information about how humans think, feel, act and interact with environment. There's a lot of information in the field of neuroscience. There's ongoing research when it comes specifically to neuroscience, applied to architecture. Neuroscience helps us also to shift focus from aesthetics towards multisensory embodied experience of architecture. It helps to consider perspective of specific populations, enables the quantification of human experience, and also brings this increased control over process and outcomes. And science can help us to shift design from efficient to effective. That's kind of idea that I've brought from Hume at the time when I used to collaborate with this studio. Is also an argumentation very often repeated by Itai Palti, the founder of Hume. Thanks to science, cognitive neuroscience, or neuroscience in general, apart from this traditional set of metrics present in the world of built environment, we could have a new set of metrics, human metrics, so we could understand better if design, for example, helps us to thrive on cognitive level, if design supports learning, if design supports well-being. And to summarize my provocation, I think smart cities should be really investment in people. We face so many different problems globally: climate change, migration crisis, gender inequalities, economic inequalities, aging populations, and I think there should be more and more effort to render our cities healthy, but cities, the role of cities should be also enabling prevention of disease. So I think these salutogenic environments become central to design. Of course, globally, there are discrepancies. I know that Singapore is a benchmark for many cities across the world. That's an example of hospital from Singapore that people who know Singapore probably know very well as an example. Of course, part of this effort to create salutogenic environments is to implement biophilic design guidelines, but I think salutogenic environments are about more than biophilic design, but it's certainly an important pillar of the effort. And to be really provocative at the very end, I would like to cite 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐿. She's urban epidemiologist based at the University of Cambridge. I've had a chance to meet her a few years ago during a conference in London on conscious cities, and 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐿, during her presentation, said something that really resonated with me. She said, architects and urbanists are healthcare professionals. So that's what I've prepared for today. I'll just stop sharing my screen, and maybe we can start discussion with Aurel.
Thank you, Natalia. Really wonderful presentation. So what I will just start this discussion, and again, I would be super happy to receive more comments from the audience. Feel free to type it into the chat, and we'll bring it in. It was a very, very rich arc that you've presented, and I would say it's kind of a fundamental talk in the in this series, because you really put the humans at the center. And one of the aims of the Smart and Cultural Cities project was to rethink the cities aspect and the technology aspect in a wider socio-cultural dimension, with the aim to highlight the human aspect of this. Um, now, if we take this very far, we could say humans are embedded in a cyber physical system, and smart cities is just the next level and the next scale of it. So, as you say, there's a repercussion between environment and the people that inhabit it, and the city is becoming an environment for humans. And the smart city, with all the augmentations and the sensory capacities, the way that it can manipulate the environment, shapes the way that we see the city and also shapes us. So I think that's really fascinating to see that link. More comment than a question is, and I'm just doing this to also reiterate some of the key messages, is that if smart cities are cyber physical systems out of which humans are, where humans are at the center, then I want to reverse it. I want to ask you, what kind of agency do you see for humans then to shape this? It seems to be that the smart city cyber physical system is very complex. This is already a mouthful to say it, but it seems like this technology is on us in so many different ways, and data is invisible, and the technology is sometimes difficult to comprehend. So how do you think we can regain agency in this?
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, very, very good question. Thank you for summarizing some of the threads from the discussion. Very good question, and I don't know if I've got an answer to this question, but of course we can discuss it. And I would like also to understand your perspective, because I know that after all you've got this hands-on or first-hand experience of designing cities, being an architect and urban planner. So the question is, yes, who shapes cyber physical systems that humans are embedded in? And is it that the situation is already out of control? Is it that ordinary inhabitants of cities can regain, as you're saying, their agency, or at least opt in, opt out of some of these, I don't know, loops that they are part of, sometimes without their awareness? And my, first response would be yes, inclusion, 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 and stress on human rights when it comes to design of cities. How to do it in practice? I would like to understand your perspective also, or
Well, I think the
perspective there.
first step is to be aware of it and raise consciousness for these effects, because we know of these. We we're aware of the effects of, let's say, advertisement, or the creation of pleasant public space on us. It just changes our mood. It incites us to spontaneously do something. In the case of advertisement, maybe to buy something even though we didn't think of it, or in the case of a nice public realm, maybe to stay a little bit longer instead of just kind of walking through it. I think the question of health is getting very important, for the simple fact that the world's population is living in cities, and we can't rely on a romantic notion of the countryside where we escape to recharge and then we come back. There is no countryside anymore. We all live in cities, and we need to develop and design these cities in a way that we want to live in them. And technology, and this is where the smart city aspect comes in, is part of the cities. So one thing that comes to my mind is that we could render it more visible, this type of the effects that the smart city technology has on us. I think that's also a role of artists typically, where they would say, I want to render something visible which has a profound impact on our social structure, but is somehow rendered invisible. And that would be very interesting. So the first step is being aware of this. Artists could facilitate that, with by visualizing it, simply by visualizing the data, or telling us, okay, while walking and texting, you've actually generated a data footprint, and that data footprint is being picked up and is changing algorithms that will rate this street differently. And just by you maybe stopping because, I don't know, something caught your attention, the algorithm is going to rate the shop better because apparently it draws more attention. So there are all these kinds of repercussions that we can play with. I think in terms of agency, currently there's a disbalance. The technology is often provided by large companies, and the users, and particularly the citizens, have very little choice about that technology. I hope that in a cyber-physical future, smart cities will be more driven by the people, and that they choose what regime of algorithms is shaping that interaction, and that they have more ownership about the data that they produce. I think that's one thing. But I want to come back to the pyramids that you show, because it's very obvious, and we tend to forget that at the end of the day, we're made out of flesh and bones, and we have very pragmatic needs. Like if we don't have food and water, we get very cranky. If we can't sleep, then we can't function. And cities are designed to provide this even before they were smart. But now with a smart city, we have even more possibilities to tap into that infrastructure. I mean, we have all the sharing economy. We can call food if we need to. We don't even have to plan our groceries anymore. We just get stuff delivered. So there's a whole level of convenience that just tries to tap into that pyramid. And I think it would be super interesting to, let's say, check all the smart city technology and at what level of the pyramid they're really working at. And one assumption that I have is that the aim of the smart and cultural city is to work at the top end of the pyramid and to achieve something which you describe as neuroaesthetics, something that gives us positive emotions and the feeling of being part of something bigger. But a lot of the tech currently at place is actually manipulating that lower neurophysiological level, and just by providing us with comfort, they also charge us quite a bit for it. So I think it's really interesting to have that pyramid in mind, and see how smart tech and emerging technology is addressing that. Yeah, so we're at the
I'll just come back, if I may, I'll come back to discourse of pyramid, but I also wanted to come back to discourse of agency in the city. And it was interesting what you were saying about making some of the technologies embedded in cities more visible, more apparent. Definitely a role of artists. I think artists, writers, they've been always indicating helping people to awake, to stay awake in a way. I remember years ago when I was a teenager, I read a book of a dystopian book of The Brave New World of Huxley. And once I read this book, it made me really very skeptical about all sorts of, manipulations and rendering people more happy through the pills or through technologies, or I'm kind of skeptical about it. But I was thinking that I started also with this invisible cities of Italo Calvino, and I think that yes, today invisible cities, there's this, as you said, cyber-physical layer, technological layer, which is very much invisible to us. That's a new layer. It's part of invisible city also. Algorithm, it's very interesting discourse. I'm really fond of books of Harari, Yuval Harari, who speaks about dataism. He in a way speaks about transhumanism, also evolution of human species, and he stresses the fact that for thousands of years, people were making decisions based on biological algorithms, emotional algorithms, right? He, of course, conquers the idea of free will. He says, yes, people have will. If it's free, it's disputable. I don't want maybe to go too far into philosophical discourse, but he says that there are all sorts of determinants that I don't know. Push people towards certain choices in their lives, choice of mate or choice of work and things like that. But today, with the use of with technologies embedded everywhere, we make decisions in different way, right? There are these technologies which very often are more aware really of what is going on in our bodies, or they actually know us better than we know ourselves. So I think this discussion about agency of people is really pressing and urgent. And yes, we started also speaking about pyramid. You were saying it would be nice, yes, to design cities. I don't know if I understood how far you think it's practically possible to use some sort of framework which would enable us understanding how far a city with its infrastructure and etc. responds to needs of people. But how far is feasible? Yeah.
I think that the smart city is already doing the whole pyramid. So
Yeah.
since you showed the picture earlier, I'm just going to re-describe it. So the picture has a pyramid where you have food, water, light, and then sleep and physical movement and these kind of aspects at the bottom. But then it goes quickly into social interaction and brain and positive emotion. And it's on the top of this is nature and beauty and being part of something bigger. So the aim of creating cities and living together as a society is about achieving all of those goals. It's being a pyramid. We start with the foundation. We start with the bottom layers, and we work our way up. I think that the smart city, and we've been discussing, the two of us, and beforehand already, that it's very difficult to define it to begin with. But the lens that we apply here is the lens of humans, in particular, the neuroscientific approach to it. So human beings being defined by complex neuroscientific processes which are triggered by the chemistry inside of our head. And we are constantly manipulating that with the media that we expose ourselves to. So it's not an abstract thing that there is an algorithm here and that there's neuroscience there. They're connected. Every time that we look into the smartphone, every time that we receive a like or a social interaction, there's dopamine being expelled. And of course, the same thing happens on a larger urban level where thousands and millions of people are being conditioned in a way. Well, so this is where it brings me back to the question of what Aldous Huxley described in The Brave New World. Is there are we part of a system which controls us and makes us feel great, like where we have this new drug called the smartphone and we're constantly happy because we always get this dopamine kick? Or is it I mean, is there a world outside where we still can act and do something? I think it would be very sad to conclude that it's a brave new world where everything's just predetermined for us. I would hope that there is some space for agency. And I would think that if we're aware of these neuro scientific feedback loops from the smart technology in the smart city on the humans and back, that we can also hack it and change it. So that's kind of what I would be interested in.
Yeah. Yes, you're very right that actually these neuroscientific loops, it's not the future, it's the presence, and they are all they are omnipresent, they are everywhere, and of course it's part of social media. Very interesting documentary that I've seen some time ago on Netflix. I think it was called Social Dilemma. I don't know how far this vision of creators of social media, how far they were demonized by the creators of the documentary, but there was a lot of discussion that most of creators of social media go to the courses of behavioral sciences in order to understand better how to hack humans, and yes, overuse, I would say, human physiology in order to render their solutions more popular, right? Because after all, it's about the number of likes.
Mm.
But so of course we've got this problem of loneliness across the globe, and for many people, social media offer opportunity to stay connected, to be part of bigger community, and of course creators of these instruments say, well, this is why what we do is good and positive and important, because we help to create these communities. But the question is it a sense of connection that we are again wired for? Because originally it was more about sense of community in also physical sense, right? Of course, we are evolving. This is another thing, that human species keep on evolving, and now we are evolving in the presence of all these technologies which reshape our brains after all.
Yeah. So I see some questions coming in from the audience. So Sanjana is asking, hi, thank you so much for the presentation. Truly inspiring. Continuing the discussion, maybe younger generation are more prone to cyber-physical system in a negative, maybe the aspect of interaction between different age groups for well-being using the enriched environment and by triggering cognition through shared memories could help break this barrier for cities. So I think there are 2 points here. One is how a younger generation that grew up with this type of technology is more prone to negative aspects. I think we're about to see that, but I'll leave it to you. And the next one is kind of this inter-age question, because we also have still a large population, an older population that is not really connected to this. So is there something like a digital divide? And so I'm just giving that out to you, Natalia.
Oh yeah, of course, there's digital divide, and of course, these days it's like not that I'm an expert on these things, or I'm very aware of these digital gaps or digital divisions, but of course we are talking about technological literacy, and definitely it's a very interesting point of view also, because I think. Aurel, would you say that younger generations are more intertwined into this cyber-physical layer of smart cities comparing to elder populations? Much
I mean, we
depends
we can't generalize, but I think that there's an obvious shift happening. Like, I mean, a lot of the interaction in a younger generation, like adolescents and up, really takes place in the cyberspace, and they usually adopt technology much faster. So for them, there's a blend. I would call it a hybrid, or kind of an overlay of cyber and physical systems, which is very interesting there. Now, in a way, it's just a technology, so we can't, you can't demonize it from the beginning. There might be a lot of positive effects as well. We all know this. You can reinvent yourself. You can have an avatar. You can pretend to be somebody, or you can maybe find your niche and your safe space in the internet. That said, there's a certain risk that talking about the current way that algorithms are designed to attract our attention, there's a reward only for those heteronormative role models, which leaves a lot of people behind. So we know these studies about young women that get depressed because they look too much at the wrong type of Instagram messages, and that Instagram, just for sake of getting more clicks, will present them even worse things that push them into, I don't know, some sort of disorders. And there's something we need to be aware of. But I think that we need to stick back to the point of what the smart cities do and what the cultural aspect of smart cities can be. I think what we've concluded is that there is this really interesting link between the neuroscientific effects of smart city technology on us. And there's a really interesting feedback by how we react to it. So we have a system, one is a technological system and the other one is a physiological system that interact. And there's a dynamic. And the question is, can we think of a kind of right social framework to shape it in the direction we want to? Does it have to be only from a commercial point of view, more clicks, more attention, or can it be also from another point of view that allows us to actually achieve goals collectively that we might not be able to achieve otherwise? I think I'm going to wrap up with one more question from Sufern. She says, thanks, Natalia. I really appreciate learning about the neuroscientific perspective towards cities and urban planning. However, I do wonder, when thinking of human needs, realistically, every human has different needs. And like you pointed out, city planning also needs to be context specific. So how can one balance the differing needs and the possible ensuing tensions? So, but how do you balance this?
Very good question. And again, I don't know if I have an answer to that. So what I was trying to stress is the fact that we should learn from science about some universal needs. I agree that we are all different, but in many aspects we are similar, especially when it comes to human physiology or the way we respond to some elements of environments. And neuroscience applied to architecture, for example, tries to understand where there are differences, for example, age differences or sex differences when it comes to appraisal, for example, of shapes or contours, and where there are universalities. And I think it's in general the endeavor of science to understand what is specific, what is universal, and what is more subjective. I would say that when it comes to, okay, if I had to simplify, I would say that culture and some aspects of culture are need to be definitely contextualized, and how to solve this problem. As I said, I think we always need to include in the process people who understand very very well the setting and the context, and this aspect of intersubjectivity and cultural exchange. Yeah, that would be my very general answer. I don't know how to tackle this problem in nuance.
Yeah, I think it's a very complex one. I think that we do agree, Sufern, with the fact that we're still individuals and we have different needs, but we're also humans, and that's maybe the surprising fact that we are, we share the same chemistry. We can't really escape that. So yes, there are minds which allows us to think in one way or another, but then there's the whole chemical aspect which you just can't ignore. And it seems to be that there is an interesting link between smart technology and, by extension, smart cities that can influence it in a positive or in a better, in a worse way. So the positive examples were those that Natalia mentioned initially. It's like, how can we make our lives more livable, reduce stress levels, create for diversity, and therefore maybe extend our lifespan? That would be the great example. The other one would be maybe inadvertently we also create spaces that do just the opposite, and that render it even worse by technology. So I think that's the exciting part about science, that this is a field that is still emerging, and it's also the exciting part about smart cities, that in fact, as we initially said, there isn't a definition of it. So they can go either way. We can shape them. And that's maybe one of the messages I also want to bring back home. There is always the possibility, once you understand those mechanisms, to interfere with them in a creative way. Being a scientist, an artist, a designer, or a critic, you have the possibility to engage with it and to reshape it, and eventually do something with it that you want. Yeah. So I think if I look at my watch, we're already a little bit over time. May I give the word back to Sue Fern?
Yes, thank you so much.
I think
So thank you both. In particular, thank you, Natalia, for such a insightful sharing, and also for Aurel for your perceptive kind of responses, as well for your thoughtful and generous moderation. I think you both of you really enriched the culture in the Smart City project with your participation tonight. And I hope for everyone that tonight's conversation helped to further illuminate and also question possible frameworks to better plan, build and rejuvenate future cities that are hopefully more conscious and inclusive of human needs and experiences. I think what stood out for me from tonight was from Natalia's sharing was the need to learn from other disciplines and fields, where tonight we saw how we could learn from neuroscience to shift towards conscious cities that are designed on principles such as health, inclusion, social connection, and human interactivity. And I also appreciated Aurel's kind of highlight of the significant and essential role of artists in increasing our human agency in our cyber physical future by making us more aware of the implications of this pervasive presence of digital technologies in our everyday lives, and how artists are able to give meaningful critique of our current systems and push us all humans to engage thoughtfully and make steps towards positive change. And I would like to thank all of you here for joining us, especially for those of you who shared your insights and questions, which really helped to push the conversation further and deeper. Just before we officially close this session, I would like to reshare that tonight's dialogue is just one of the many programs that is part of the Culture in the Smart City project. Apart from this dialogue here tonight, we also have an ongoing hybrid exhibition that will actually go on till the end of this weekend, or rather 3rd of April 2022. This hybrid group exhibition is entitled Tracing Latencies, where we explore the politics of invisibility and illegibility in the future smart city through showcasing the artistic practices and creativity of a diversity of artists and practitioners from Singapore and Southeast Asia, as well as the winning works from our global open call. For those of you who are joining us in Singapore, we hope that you will come down and visit the physical exhibition at 136 Goethe Lab. And in particular, we also hope that you will join us for the activations during the closing weekend. For more details, do follow us on our social media channels or checking our website regularly. Finally, but most importantly, on behalf of my team, Victoria, Carissa, Charlotte, and myself, we would like to thank UNIQ, the Embassy of the Republic of Poland, and the Goethe-Institut Singapore for your generous support. And we wish each of you here well, stay safe, and we hope to see you again, whether virtually or physically, in other programs of this project. Thank you and good day or good night.